Ian Wright was different. He's probably the best centre forward I ever played with, and I play with Shearer, and I mean his goal scoring record talks for itself.
Behind every great goalkeeper, there's a ball from Ian Wright. A Nike billboard posted up all over England in the mid-90s. It's one of those instances of art imitating real life. He was that good. We all know Ian Wright as a jovial, witty, and thoughtful figure in media and punditry. Everyone's favorite uncle, the Crystal Palace player of the 20th century, a bona fide Arsenal legend, and once the club's top scorer outright. But behind the scenes and the accolades lies a boy that was once thought of as nothing. Mental and physical abuse, prison sentences, racism, rejection. A lot of rejection. He endured it all. He succeeded anyway. It's a tale that everyone needs to hear. How did he survive? How did he persevere? And, of course, when it comes to the pitch, how good was Ian Wright, really? Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. Born in 1963, Ian's family comes from Jamaica, with his grandfather being half Syrian. He grew up in Brockley, southeast London, with 2 older brothers and a younger sister. Unfortunately, his journey was overshadowed by hardships in those early days. His biological father left his family when he was just 18 months old, an event that rippled long into the future. When he was 5, his mother got remarried to Ian's stepfather. Growing up, children need support and belief from their parents. Ian got the exact opposite of that. His stepfather was described as a weed-smoking, gambling, coming home late, gambling his wages, womanizing kind of guy. Physical and mental torment were a common occurrence. Ian was described as a very extroverted and outgoing child, a great quality to have and one most people dream their children have, but one that inexplicably made his stepfather resent him. He was bullied in his own house as a child. His stepfather seemed to enjoy or take pride in making his life miserable and torturing him. Naturally, he used any excuse to leave the house, but there was one thing that he and his brothers looked forward to every week. Match of the day. A display of the best players in the land doing their thing. A child's dream. However, if you haven't already clocked on, there was misery built in here.
Back then, when my stepdad would come home, it'd make me turn away from the TV and face the wall when it was on. Just because he could.
Ian and his brother would cry as his stepfather enjoyed himself watching the games and would be yelled at if they tried so much as to peek. What he enjoyed more, the games or making the boys cry, was a mystery. Football was a savior for Wright, something he had an incredible amount of love and pride for, a striker with a deft scoring touch. He was exceptional and was always one of the best on the pitch. The only problem with that was that he lacked support where it mattered. On top of his stepfather being the way he was, his own mother was not much better. She would take out her own frustrations on him and his brother and have her own alcoholic tendencies. I can't remember being hugged much by my mom. In 2021, Wright produced a BBC special, Ian Wright, Home Truths, where he recounts these traumatic events in detail and much more. Along with several other victims of domestic trauma, he aims to shed light on an issue nobody likes to talk about. Of course, almost none of it is fit for YouTube censorship, so I implore you to watch it yourself if you get the chance. Every time Ian would go to trials for clubs, his mom would say it was a waste of time and he would never be able to go pro. With no role models, no belief in him, and constant torment, he became angry, aggressive. He was one of the only black children in his class and he was bullied there too. Naturally, he underperformed at school and would get kicked out of the class for being too loud. However, this ended up being Ian's silver lining. At the age of around 7, Ian remembers getting sent out of a class multiple times, and almost every time, the same teacher would walk by and see him outside the classroom. This man was Sidney Pigden. Mr. Pigden was a former Royal Air Force fighter pilot in World War II, and this man changed Ian Wright's life. When he saw Ian outside the classroom all those times, he decided to care for him and help Ian when nobody else would. Mr. Pigden took it upon himself to teach Ian how to read, Wright, he gave him responsibilities and small jobs to do to teach him lessons. He was his first football coach. But the greatest thing that Mr. Pigden gave Ian was a sense of importance. He made Ian feel like he mattered to someone for the first time in his life. Mr. Pigden was the one to put Ian on the right path. He's the person that everything I do, especially what I'm doing now with the everyday people, is inspired by him because he was an amazing man. To give you an idea of how much this man meant to Ian Wright, I'm about to show you a short clip of the two reuniting in 2005, years after Wright had retired from football. For context, Wright had been looking for Mr. Pigden for about 5 years at this point, and nobody from his old school or community had any idea of his whereabouts. Wright had assumed the worst.
Hello, Ian. Long time no see.
Mr. Pigden. You're alive. I can't believe it. Someone said you was dead.
This clip has been shared and reshared several times over the years. This look right here, this cannot be faked. But back to the 80s, there was still a long way to go. Despite being exceptional, he never got selected at football teams where he trialed, and he trialed at a lot of teams. This continued deep into early adulthood. In fact, his final trial before he just about gave up came when he was 19 years old. It was for Brighton. It took him about 100 miles to get there from where he lived, and yet again, even though he played exceptionally, scoring goals against the first team, he did not get picked. He yearned to be a pro, but it was at that point that he had to be realistic about life. And so the struggles continued. He struggled to find a job, but eventually landed one as a bathroom cleaner in Greenwich, a job he describes as extremely degrading. Soon after, he was arrested and sent to prison for 32 days for driving without car insurance. At the same time, he had a pregnant girlfriend as well as her 2-year-old son that he had adopted to take care of. He adopted the boy because he remembered everything he went through with his stepfather and didn't want anyone else to go through that kind of pain. The name of that boy? Sean Wright Phillips. The name of his soon-to-be-born son? Bradley Wright Phillips. But we'll touch on them again later. The situation was as desperate as you can imagine for a young man in his early 20s, but it also gave him the push he needed to put his head down and create a better life for those that depended on him. Things began to be better. He went on to receive several promotions at work and recommitted himself to football, becoming the top scorer in his local Sunday league. And then, as if it were the work of destiny itself, 1985 was the year that everything changed. The year he signed for Greenwich Borough, a semi-professional team, earning him an extra £30 per week above his day job as a plasterer at that point. It wasn't life-changing, but it was about to be. He was scoring 3 or 4 goals almost every week and was bored with the competition. People were noticing. Then, all of a sudden, Crystal Palace came calling for a trial. When Ian saw the offer from Palace, he was the most excited he had ever been in his life. Yeah, just kidding. He rejected the trial. Then he rejected it a second time. And finally, he rejected it a third time. Ian had been to so many trials where he felt he was one of the best players, yet he didn't get picked. He now had a job that was paying him decent money so he could provide for his family, and he couldn't risk that for just another trial. He spoke to his colleagues at work who tried to tell him that this was the opportunity of a lifetime, that he couldn't pass it up, but Ian did not want to hear any of it. One random day following this, he was talking to his boss at his day job, and the conversation shifted. When he heard about the trials for Palace, he said he'd give Ian time to go out to the trials and come back after without risking his job. And I guess this was the cheat code that he needed all along. Ian played with no care in the world at this trial, unlike his previous one at Brighton where he tried to do everything correctly. Here, he took everyone on and shot from wherever he wanted. He was just living in the moment with no stress or care about making the team because, quite frankly, he didn't think he would. He was one of the best players there, including the first team players. At the end of the trial, Palace offered him to stay for 3 more months. And guess what he did? He rejected them again. His boss only gave him 2 weeks off, but Palace liked him so much that they offered to match his job salary for the next 3 months, regardless of the trial outcome. Only 6 weeks later, they had seen enough. He signed his first professional contract at 21 years old, was never a part of any academy. Can you believe it? Given all that he'd been through, you can only imagine the emotions. Now a professional, Ian was deployed in a second division Crystal Palace side. He continued scoring goals and proving his abilities. However, as if on theme for this man's life, he was tormented by cruel characters even after earning his dream job. The tormentor was Jim Cannon, former Crystal Palace centre-back. According to Wright, this man was a real piece of work, constantly bullying Wright in the communal dining room, intentionally fouling him in training, making fun of his accent and how he talked, and making his life just a living nightmare. What's worse is that he was one of the most senior players in the Palace team and already kind of a club legend, so you can only imagine the power dynamics. This went on almost unchecked from the day Ian Wright joined Palace in 1985 to when Cannon left in 1988.
Jim Cannon, Scottish player, centre half. He made my first couple of years in professional football a fucking nightmare, man. He was a bully in there.
To this day, Cannon maintains that what he did was nothing but banter. Wright disagrees. Regardless, it didn't stop Wright from achieving what he did. In fact, it was after 1988 when his career went into a whole new gear. He helped Crystal Palace regain their spot in the top division in 1989 by scoring a career high of 24 goals in the league. One of the biggest moments of his early career took place in the 1990 FA Cup final against Manchester United. Palace were down 2-1 late in the game. Wright scored to send the game to extra time, and then he scored again to put them up. Unfortunately, United overturned the tie and eventually won in the replay. But this was a huge moment. At the end of the day, Wright's goal record for Crystal Palace was an impressive 90 goals in 225 games, and he was only getting started. These numbers are what led him to get his dream move to Arsenal at 28 years of age. £2.5 million, a club record fee at the time, which should tell you all you need to know about what they thought of him.
If you weren't an Arsenal fan, you was an Ian Wright fan. Don't care. A defender's nightmare. Some of the goals that Wright scored as well, you look at them and you think, rah, this guy was doing like playground tricks and like...
His arrival to Arsenal came with some slight concerns because they had Alan Smith, who the season prior won his second Golden Boot. But this didn't stop Ian from being excited. Simply joining Arsenal wasn't the only reason why he was excited. He got to play with one of his childhood friends and someone he very much looked up to, David Rocastle. Growing up, they were good friends. David was slightly older than Ian, but now they were both over the moon that they got to play alongside each other. Naturally, due to how big this step was for Ian Wright, he began to show a few nerves when he joined the Gunners, playing nervously in training and making dumb mistakes. But it was David that helped calm him down. Almost instantly, the questions about Ian at Arsenal vanished. In his first game against Leicester in the League Cup, he scored as a substitute, but it got even better because in his first league game, David Rocastle scored a goal that was followed by an Ian Wright hat-trick. These opening games were not a fluke because Ian couldn't stop scoring and finished with the Golden Boot with 29 goals in 38 games. He almost immediately became an Arsenal great, finishing that season as Arsenal's Player of the Year, and then doing it again the next year. And something has to be said about the caliber of goals he was scoring and the general displays of brilliance he was producing, a poacher and a sharpshooter. I've already played you 2 short clips of Paul Merson and Rio Ferdinand heaping praise on him, but you need to understand that this is what everyone was saying about him at the time and to this day. Fast, two-footed, strong, gritty. In a lot of ways, Ian Wright is underrated today, probably due to a lot of factors. He started out quite late. He played in the same day and age of the Eric Cantonas, Andy Coles and Alan Shearers of the world that were putting up 34 league goal seasons. At Arsenal specifically, he was followed immediately by Thierry Henry, despite never scoring less than 23 goals in all competitions in a season between 1990 and 1997. He was never truly given a chance with the English national side, only starting about 17 games for the Three Lions. Shearer, Cole, Teddy Sheringham, Les Ferdinand, Robbie Fowler and others were picked ahead of him for one reason or another. However, make no mistake, the man was an absolute baller. Wright finished his Arsenal career with 185 goals in 288 games, a record only bested by Henry. However, with an astonishing 0.64 goal-to-game ratio, which is more than Thierry Henry's of 6, he has that over on him, at least. Early in his Arsenal career, he helps them win the domestic double by winning the FA Cup and the League Cup in 92-93, a European Cup Winners' Cup in 94, and a final appearance of the same competition the next year. He had longevity in him too. At 33, he was still banging in goals, scoring 30 in all competitions in the 1996-97 year. However, the crowning jewel of his magical 7 years at Arsenal were a Premier League and FA Cup double to take Arsenal back to the very top of England in 1998. This was his final year as a Gunner. Although his time at Arsenal wasn't always pleasant, he clashed with coach Bruce Rioch and eventually even handed in a transfer request as a direct result of this. Thankfully, Rioch only stayed for 1 year, with Wenger following on. After short stints with West Ham, Nottingham Forest, Celtic and Burnley, he closed the curtains on his career in 2000, a career that has rightly been immortalized in the Premier League Hall of Fame. Ever since then, he's been a mainstay in football punditry and media. If you ask most Arsenal fans, they'll refer to him as a sort of uncle figure. If you ask most non-Arsenal fans, they'll say he's a man that's impossible to dislike. If you're old enough to have watched him play against your team and you like him, chances are that's because he can't hurt you anymore. A presence that combines pristine football knowledge with a wholesome touch, a real personality, and a breath of fresh air in an industry where many are a bit, well, boring. Sean and Bradley, two of his children, followed in his footsteps and carved their own paths too. Sean Wright Phillips, his adopted son, graduated from Manchester City's academy and became a Premier League winner himself, winning it with Chelsea under Jose Mourinho. And this man, the streets can't forget him. This man was a baller. I witnessed this firsthand. Bradley found a home for himself in New York, becoming the all-time highest scorer for the New York Red Bulls with 126 goals, more than double the man in second place. His number 99 jersey has since been retired by the club. Ian Wright's career was nothing short of remarkable. His life started out in turmoil, but has since become nothing short of remarkable. It was never easy, and he had to endure significantly more than I've portrayed in this video, but none of it could stop him from becoming one of the greatest players and one of the greatest humans to grace the world of football. And there we have it. Let me know what you all think about Ian Wright. That's all from me today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you're having a great day. Cheers, and I will catch you in the next one.